Hi everyone, and welcome back to PCA's Garage. This is the 13th episode of Tech Tactics Live, and I'm glad you're with us tonight. We've got an exciting show for you. In fact, you're going to be so excited that not only the topic that we're going to cover, but for those of you that are watching live right now, if you've put your name into the chat area, you're going to be enrolled to win some awesome prizes. And if you've probably seen the announcement, you already know that Michelin has pampered us with some very cool things. So make sure, let me go through a couple of housekeeping things. Be sure to like, subscribe, and of course comment in the live chat area as well as the regular area. The more you guys do all this stuff, guess what? Folks like Michelin and all of our other sponsors are going to get excited about us doing these shows, and we'll get even more prizes and such to get out to you. So, where do I start? Pumpkin spice lattes are out. Christmas decorations are out at Costco. Frost happened here in Maryland. So, the thought of winter tires and tire storage came across my mind. And I know it's only October, or soon to be October, but I figured we'd get on this topic soon. For those of you that live in maybe milder climates where you're not dealing with snow, I'm sure you're still dealing with low temperatures. And a lot of what we're going to be talking about today will apply. We've got some experts with us. Let me talk about the prizes first before I introduce them. So the very first prize, that's everyone that's watching tonight will be eligible, is for this Michelin swag bag. Now the next two prizes are only eligible for PCA members that are watching tonight. And the first item is going to be this PCA Cooper tire cradle that was just recently added to the PCA store. Obviously for storage, keeps your tires nice and round, $400 value. It's got a great PCA logo on it. Someone tonight's going to win that. And the big grand prize tonight, yes, a set of 4 Michelin tires. And it's going to be your choice of what kind of tire for your passenger or light truck. And you can choose tires up to a value of $2,000. That's awesome. And thank you so much to Michelin, and we'll meet the folks that made that happen for us tonight. The first gentleman I'd like to introduce, we've seen him at Porsche Parade, we've seen him at PCA Tech Tactics. His seminars are always packed full of folks, and it's a product marketing gentleman from Michelin, Steve Calder. Steve, great to see you again. Well, hopefully you can hear him because I think his mic is, or at least for me, his mic is not on. Try it now. Go ahead, Steve.
Hello, Bill.
All right. Good.
All right, good. Working.
All right. And he has his partner in crime with him today, product category manager, talking about the winter tires for us tonight, Farell Scott. Farell, thank you for joining us.
Hi, nice to be here. Thank you.
So, this is a little bit different than how we normally have our seminars, Steve, but being able to share the information that you have, I know all of our viewers are going to love it. I'm going to monitor the live chat as well as my team, and we'll throw out some of the questions they have for you as we go through. But let's get right into it. We're talking about winter tires and tire storage tonight. And I'm going to start it off actually with the first true and false. Can we do that, Robert? The first true, tire, false? The first one. Tire selection should be based on ambient temperature it will be used in. Folks, what do you think? Tire selection should be based on ambient temperature it will be used in. And so, Farell, it is true. Let's talk about summer all-season tires versus winter tires.
Okay. Well, there are clearly differences, more than just in the name of the tire. As your true and false question indicated, their temperatures are absolutely critical consideration when selecting when to choose a winter tire and when to place those winter tires on your vehicle. Um, there's one of the slides that I like to show you that shows the summer and all season and winter transition temperature. That key temperature that you see right there in the center, that 7 degrees Celsius, that is 45, roughly 45 degrees Fahrenheit, is really that temperature where you'll start to, excuse me, see the compounds in the three different tires start to perform much differently in the areas of tire performance for braking, acceleration, handling, and things like that, because that's really um, where the compound in each tire has built in or baked in the different formulations that allow the tires to operate in a different temperature. So what is really key to remember is obviously there's the ambient temperature, but also there's the road temperature that you need to consider as well. And so obviously when you go to transition and from summer or fall to winter temperature, there's going to be days where clearly the temperature could be above that 7 degrees Celsius target. So for winter tires, you clearly want to make sure that you have those tires ready to put on your vehicle, because if the temperatures are above that and you're driving on those, you're going to have potentially premature wear on the tire again, because the compound is really designed and comes alive or activated in cold temperatures or temperatures below that. Unlike
Can I
the summer
interrupt you
tire.
real quickly as I look at that graph? I'm sorry, but this is something that Steve taught me, and maybe I shouldn't be putting Steve in front of the bus here, but all-season tires. If you look at all-season tires, it's kind of in the middle, right? And if I'm not mistaken, Steve, all-season tires really just exist in the U.S. market as opposed to the rest of the world. Like I know my cousins in Canada, they usually run summer tires, and then when it gets cold, they switch to winter tires. If you look at what I have here on my desk here, Robert, or my bench, I have my summer tires, and this is for my Cayenne, which is four-wheel drive, but or all-wheel drive. Summer tires for when it's above 7 degrees C or 42, 45, and then I have dedicated winter tires for when it's below. So if you go back to that graph, it just kind of reinforces that an all-season tire is kind of like a hybrid bicycle. It kind of can do both, but it doesn't do any of it well. So that's just the point I wanted to share. And if you're driving a Porsche, typically you're looking for maximum performance. And if you want maximum performance in all those seasons, you should get the tires that are the maximum performer for that temperature and not the middle row.
Well said.
And that was all from a Tech Tactics session with Steve Calder.
I'm glad you were listening.
See, I paid attention. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but Farell, please continue.
And that's a great observation. Obviously, AllSeason is trying to offer you what the summer can, and that is clearly that snow performance, right? And so the compromise typically is obviously in the wet and dry performance there. And clearly it's not as good as the winter tires or compound.
Farell, I think something is going wrong with your microphone. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is that better? Do you hear me better now? Or?
It was better. Oh, I'm sorry, folks. We test this off. No. Maybe should we try your computer's microphone or? Sorry, folks. Technical difficulties. It does happen, and this is what happens when we go live.
Okay, I'm trying the computer right now. Is that better?
No, unfortunately not. All right. So we're going to have him try to disconnect and reconnect, and we'll kind of keep going here. I think Steve and we can probably continue the discussion with summer and all season and winter. Treads is another thing. I've talked about my summer tires on my Cayenne and the channels that it has for water and such when it's bad weather. But can you share with me, Steve, the blocks on a winter tire is far different from a standard all-season or summer tire, and I think they're called sipes, right? And what do they do?
Yeah, the tread pattern of a winter tire is highly siped. So there are the tread blocks are literally cut up, sliced up, and the main goal of that is two things. It gives the tire some more biting edges, what we call biting edge, so that every edge of the sipe is able to grip a little bit of the pavement. But also it makes the tread block very mobile. So a key to really good winter traction is not only a compound that can stay very flexible at low temperatures, but a tread pattern that is also very supple and mobile. So you want the tire to remain soft. You don't want it to freeze up in the really cold conditions. And actually, one thing, I spent 10 years coordinating our snow testing campaign and driving tires in the snow. So I'm not a tire designer, but I can tell you what I experienced actually driving them is that actually the sipes, as the tire rolls to the contact patch, will open up, grab a little bit of snow, and then that snow that they hold on to gives you quite a bit of grip to the snow that's on the ground. So it's snow-to-snow traction. I know it's kind of hard to believe, but actually that's another mechanism where you can help to improve the snow traction of the tire, is that snow on snow traction. So some people look at their tires and they say, well, they're packed with snow. That's no good. And for a mud tire, that's no good. You want a mud tire to evacuate it. But for a snow tire, you actually want it to capture some of that snow.
And living in Maryland, I've certainly been caught in a snowstorm with a car shod with inappropriate tires. And you see a summer and all-season tire that's pretty free of snow. It really doesn't grip. But then if you look at some of the pictures earlier of my Cayenne with the winter tires, as you say, the snow packs into those little crevices, and I think, as you said, that's what makes it bite. The snow bites onto the snow and continues to move it along. You talked a little bit about tire compound, and it's what I've experienced is with my summer tires, once it gets down to, again, here in Maryland, below 40, 32, I mean, just accelerating. You can start, or sharp turns, you can feel that the compound on the summer tire gets fairly hard and starts to get slippery. And so when I put my winter tires on, it's like gummy, even though it's cold. But I assume that being gummy at above 45 degrees is not a good thing, because now they're super soft and you're probably wasting money by driving on them. Exactly. Oh, we've got Farell back. How you sound, Farell?
Not sure. Can you check?
Oh, you sound great. Different headset. Perfect. Thank you for doing that. So we I don't know if you heard what Steve and I were just kind of finishing the summer, all season versus winter. I do want to. Is there anything on that slide, Farell, that you wanted to address before I throw on another true false?
No, I just want to add.
So let's do true false number 2.
Okay.
True false number 2, Robert. Winter tires are for low speed use. Winter tires are low speed use. True or false? What do you guys think? False. And before Farell gets into the details of that, I can tell you that I've been fortunate enough to be in a vehicle at a high rate of speed on a track with winter tires, and know they're quite robust. And Farell, maybe you can talk about how they're designed. They might not be high speed as far as like a summer tire or a whatever, but there are cars in Europe that are humming along on winter tires.
Yeah, and I want to make sure that you can hear me.
Yep.
Okay, very good. I wasn't sure. Okay, so you absolutely can have fun driving your vehicle at a a speed that is comfortable, but is obviously much more than just a speed that is not necessarily something that you're excited about in
Yeah.
driving your vehicle. So the idea is that we definitely design and develop tires at on black surfaces, actually black road surfaces, with the standard tire design for summer tires, or even our all-season high performance tires. So they're already designed and have that as a part of the structure. And then typically what we do for the winter tire is we take the tread block or the sculpture and we start to introduce the siping and the compound to be able to allow you to navigate in a winter condition or on winter surfaces, like with snow, slush, or ice. So clearly, for winter conditions, one thing that you need to consider is they used to say that, hey, these are snow tires, right? But we obviously know for those that live in the different conditions that winter is much more than just snow. So you have to consider really when you're designing the tires, obviously the snow, slush, ice, black ice, of course, even dry and wet, cold ground and freezing fog, just as indicated. And we talked about the temperatures. So those are the different types of things that you're having to consider in the design of the tire. But really, it's the compound and that sculpture that allows you to be able to enjoy the benefits of the performances that you have in those in the ultra high performance winter tire.
Yeah, and let me make perfectly clear, I am not saying you should be driving fast in a snowstorm. Not at all. I'm just saying sometimes you have winter tires on your car and then a 40-degree day, dry roads comes about. It doesn't mean that your car, you're limited, so to speak, because you have winter tires. They still will perform very well, and they're designed to be that way. So,
Yeah, and
yeah, go ahead.
Yep, and one thing that I would consider obviously is, and that's a great point you make, is obviously there's a selection of speed rating tires in the W for winter, Y, but there is a preference obviously because of the different winter conditions. It depends on where you are that you're going to drive obviously with a less exuberant way of driving. So there are those V and W speed rated winter tires there as well.
All right. So let's go to our next topic, and this kind of delves a little bit into just general tire knowledge as well. I know, and that is not my car, so first I'm going to say that. But I will say that, back in, way back when people put, they had rear-wheel drive cars and they had winter tires back in the day. I know my dad was guilty of this. Like he threw winter tires on the back of the rear-wheel drive Malibu station wagon, and he had like regular, whatever radial tires up front. And then when we had I think it was like a front-wheel drive Camry or something like that, he only put two. And don't shake you two on TV here. He put two winter tires just on the front wheels of the Camry. So. I'm kind of leading into this. That's not a good thing. But you want to share with our viewers why you should not just have two winter tires versus having all four.
Yeah, so it's definitely strongly recommended that you install obviously the four winter tires, as you said. Really, again, previous generation snow tires, as you said, had they were really all-season tires, as it shows, with an aggressive tread design, and so there has been significant advancement in the rubber compound. Winter tires, just for the level of traction you can gain from the tires, and so really, because of that, you should be installing those four winter tires so that you can maintain that level of handling and traction that you're experiencing with your tires that you have on there, because what you don't want is an imbalance in performance, especially in winter driving conditions. You want to make sure from a safety standpoint that you are able to Again, in those different changing climates and conditions, that your tires are going to be able to perform to the level that you expect.
And what I also learned, at the Michelin tire school with regards to traction is you always want your best traction to be at the rear of the car. And even if you have, and am I making you proud, Steve? Because hopefully I'm saying this correctly. But you always want your best tires in the rear, even if you have front wheel drive car. And what you don't want is more traction in the front, because when you go into a turn and you have more traction in the front and it grips and that rear end comes around, that's not really controllable. But if you have good tires in the back and so-so tires in the front, it's really just going to push, and then you can do a little bit. It's easier to manage and correct that situation than having full traction in the front. So for those of you that have front wheel drive vehicles and think you can just put winter tires on the front, please don't do that. Am I right?
Exactly right. And unless you're on a closed course or in a parking lot, you want to do some really fun donuts. But on a public road, having a lot of traction with no stability is not a good combination for most drivers. Most people are comfortable with understeer and not so comfortable with oversteer. So that's why we recommend putting the better tires on the rear.
So talking about mismatched traction from front to rear, I've got to imagine, especially with the newer Porsches, that having that difference in grip probably throws off like ABS and traction control and all that sort of all the computer stuff that are in the modern day cars.
I can only imagine that the computer has to work extra hard if you do something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never experienced it personally.
So bottom line is, if you're going to put winter tires on, get all four.
Another thing I will add and share that there are fitments that will have obviously split fitment as well. So that's key. And when you're looking to consider obviously the time of having to change the tire. And sometimes we've even seen it where from an OEM standpoint, we've developed with the Porsche designers, vehicle designers, where there's a directional and asymmetric mix as well on the vehicle. Again, that is by design. It's rare, but we do see that. And again, a lot of that is based on the performance level that the vehicle is trying to reach. And that's obviously been validated and qualified and agreed upon by the OEM.
I wanted to remind everyone it's 8:25, so hopefully you put your name in the raffle. But then we do have a question here from Costanzo Rodriguez with regards to tire air pressure in winter tires. Do you keep the same air pressure or different?
Yeah, so typically what we recommend is you go with the manufacturer's recommendation for air pressure. Obviously, there need to be more frequent checks, typically in the winter, depending on where you store your vehicle, either outside or in a garage. But obviously, there with cold temperature, you typically have that leakage. So we recommend that you do those vigilant tire pressure checks to make sure that you have the right tire pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, and Vu, I can tell you a little bit about personal experience. That was a question I get quite often about should you run to lower pressure or higher pressure for snow. We actually did a study to answer that. It isn't definitive, but we ran the same set of tires at three drastically different pressures, and we had multiple drivers run it. And bottom line is the pressure had minimal effect on the lap times and how much traction the tire generates. So that's why we stay with just recommending the door pressure which you run in your tires.
Okay, so again, just to reiterate for those that didn't see the little tip there, in the door jamb on your when you open your driver's door, in the door jamb for most cars, unless your car has been repainted or something like that, it's a fairly new car, it should tell you exactly the tire pressure you should be running, when it's cold or hot. So I know in the Porsches, the Cayenne here definitely has that. So we touched a little bit about what, while you were switching headphones or your microphone there, we were talking about what makes a winter tire work. And we talked about a little bit about compound and a little bit about the sipes. But I think you've got some slides here, Farell, if you can go into a little bit more detail of how winter tires work.
Okay. So really, as you alluded to in advance, the next slide, I had talked about the different conditions, right? That your tire is really trying to work and deliver that performance. And so it's having to contend with snow, surfaces, slush, ice, and those types of things. And of course, you have extreme temperatures as well from a winter standpoint. Anywhere from obviously, if you're living in a more moderate winter zone, that 45, as I said, 42 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit, but you can obviously go as low as if you're in Nordic conditions to be, minus 30, minus 40 very easily. So, to advance to the next slide, the different surfaces that you typically see that are pretty common is, is deep snow, packed snow, and ice. Obviously, the one that is people feel like they have less control over, obviously, for obvious reasons. And so with those different variety of surfaces that you encounter, it's absolutely critical that you have sufficient grip and traction level, right, with your tires. So the mechanism, if you advance the next slide, that are really working very hard to try to help with that is when you look at the sculpture of the tread design, you have this caterpillar effect of tire moving through obviously snow, ice, where you're having to try to have that level of traction you can gain from the tire in the form of this caterpillar effect as it moves across the surface. Then there's this claw effect that you typically see with biting edges, right? Trying to obviously allow the tires to navigate across surfaces like ice and things like that. And then you have the contact surface effect. Again, it looks like sight, right? Those 3D sights that typically allow you again to have those biting edges, but you have this contact surface in the patch that is much larger, that you allow yourself to have a larger contact on the surface, right? So you can have that level of friction and traction in the contact patch. And of course, there's a tread compound effect as well, as we talked about. You typically introduce silica, and there's other materials that you can introduce to allow that compound to be able to operate in extreme cold temperatures, and you want that flexibility to be maintained in the compound. That way it's not brittle or hard and allows you to lose that traction on those surfaces that we spoke about. To advance to the next slide, you really try to find balanced performance on those different surfaces as we talked about, the deep snow, packed snow, and ice. And then you try to have a sculpture and a compound that works together that really tries to allow you to gain both the snow or deep snow, packed snow, grip and traction that you're looking for, and also balance that with the tread compound so that you can really try to allow that tire to deliver the performance you want and look for in the tire that you choose. So when you look at the caterpillar effect, when you look at the tread design, a lot of times those are open, right? A lots of void in the tires so that you can evacuate that slush, snow from the contact area so you have larger contact with the road. And then you see the claw and contact surface effect is really of those sites that you typically see that are very heavily populated within a winter tire. So that's working to, again, create those biting edges that you need to be able to grip the surface. And of course, I talked about the tread compound effect, and there's different materials that are used by tire manufacturers to be able to allow that compound to be able to have that level of flexibility and remain flexible at cold temperature so that you can have that level of contact and traction with the tire.
So, in looking at those pictures, I've seen some people that will put on, again, let's go back to my Cayenne. Like they will put like an off-road type of a tire on their Cayenne during the winter, thinking that that will work. So obviously there I have a proper snow tire, which is why you see snow stuck in between all the treads and everything. So that's the reason why, what you've just explained, like if you take an off-road tire that doesn't have those sipes, it doesn't attract the snow, it doesn't have the proper, it might work great in mud and climbing rocks or whatever it is, but it's not designed to work in the environment that a winter tire does. So for those of you that are thinking of just doing an off-road tire on and say, okay, I can use my off-road tire for the winter, and then when summer comes around, I can go, trailblazing and rock crawling or whatever, that's not a good idea. Right, so let's see. Next, true or false? Number 3, please. All tires with 3 PM SF symbol are a replacement for true dedicated winter tires. This one here, folks, I am going to plead. I have no idea what 3 PM SF is. So Tech Tactics Live is going to teach me something tonight. Farell, is this true or false? I have no idea. False. Okay, what the heck is 3 PM SF?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm glad that was a question. There's lots of questions, lots of discussion in and around 3 peak mountain snowflake symbol. So what that is really most people are familiar with the M+S, right? M+S was more designated for tires that had a particular look and a particular void or ratio for a traditional summer or all-season tire. So what that simply meant was their block configuration and the level of void ratio was at a percentage that allowed the look of the tire to look and perform potentially like a mud and snow tire. Well, to differentiate winter tires, there was a need to have a true measured level of performance. And what was decided upon is this 3 peak mountain snowflake symbol to represent that the tire has been certified and reaches the level of snow traction or severe snow traction, say, of 110 or 10% higher than the traditional all-season reference tire that it was used to have a spin traction test relative to the spin traction of an all-season reference tire. Excuse me. So what it does is allows a winter tire to be classified with a 3 peak mountain snowflake symbol for the measurement of snow traction or severe snow traction. What it does not do, obviously, for winter tires, as I alluded to earlier in the slide, is really give an indication of what the other winter conditions that the tire must also perform in, such as ice, right? And so when you see a 3 peak mountain snowflake symbol, again, it simply represents that the tire was able to reach the 110 standard for snow traction. And so what happens is there's this category of now all-season tires that also have a level of snow performance that allows it to reach and obtain the 3 peak mountain snowflake. And of course, there could be a level of confusion around that because what happens is you automatically you could potentially think that it's a winter tire. And we obviously all know now that winter, again, is much more than just snow and snow traction. And of course, winter tires have a much higher level of snow traction, much beyond the 110 as well. Okay. And so as a result of that, there's also other categories that are called all weather that's new and emerging that absolutely has a level of snow traction that allows it to have that level of performance that allows people in certain regions that don't want to transition from summer to winter tires all season to winter tires, uh, those tires that have three-peak mountain snowflake will allow them to potentially be able to use those tires in mild winter conditions. But you have to be careful again because that's really only the snow aspect and mild snow that is for that symbol.
Oh, wow. I had no idea, and now I know. Thank you for that. So we are at 8:37, and I wanted to announce, because I know people are eagerly awaiting, who the winners are of the raffle. So congratulations to these three folks. Chris Henley, you've won the Michelin swag bag. Freakador, hopefully that's not your real name, won the PCA Kuberth tire cradle. And Tom Pravasi, oh, we're also jealous of you. You've won the set of 4 Michelins. Now, in order to claim your prize, you need to send Damon a note. There's instructions in the live chat. We need to hear from you. You have to claim the prize before the end of the show. If you don't claim the prize, you will not win it and will not be raffled off tonight. So make sure Chris, Freakador, and Tom reach out to Damon, and we will schedule and get all of your prizes out to you. Let's see. Let's go to true and false number 4, please. True and false number 4. All OEM supplied tires are fine for usage under 32 degrees. All OEM supplied tires are fine for usage under 32 degrees. True or false? Let's give our folks a few seconds to chime in with their answer. And their answer is false. And a good example of this might be, let's say, a Cayenne GTS that has probably Michelin Latitude Sports. Obviously, from looking at the tread, you can guess this is a summer tire. And just because the car came with them doesn't mean that, and also just because your car is all-wheel drive, doesn't mean that it's going to do well in temperatures below 32 degrees. So maybe, Farell, if you can just kind of expound on what I just mentioned.
Yeah, there's a slide that I prepared that talks a little bit about OEM tires for winter use. Exactly, that's it. And really, as I alluded to earlier, there is absolutely lots of collaboration with the OEM and our design team and our designers to make sure that we craft and design and develop winter tires for not only the vehicles that are in marked as a part of original equipment, but also the replacement tires as well for your vehicle. So, and what that means is the winter tire has been tuned, right? Has been tuned specifically with those additional things like siping, right? The number of tread blocks, the void ratio, the tread design itself, the contact patch, compound. All of those things have been tuned and adjusted to make sure that you actually have a winter tire, including that three-peak mountain snowflake symbol that we all just learned about tonight, that you make sure that you have a winter tire to get that level of snow and ice traction that's needed for your vehicle. And again, another thing that we really consider as well in that end mark spec tire is things like not only snow performance and ice performance, but also even tire robustness, right? Because again, we know that the tire has to carry a larger load on larger vehicles like SUVs and things like that. So load is important, and as well as endurance as well. You talked about the rim protector and things like that. You think about in winter conditions, depending on where you live, there could be lots of potholes, or and those winter roads could be pretty rough as well. So the tire has to have that level of endurance as well. That needs to be considered for the design.
A perfect example of where OEM fitment wouldn't work in the winter, and I thought it was pretty funny here. Someone wrote, I think it was Phil Milan, said, try that with cup twos that are OEM equipped on a Porsche and try to take that out. Phil, I know exactly what you mean. You definitely don't want to take that out on a below 45 degree or so road temperature. But that brings up a good thought. Also, is let's say cup twos or a summer tire that has a very specific compound. I believe Steve, you shared with me, what happens when you have a tire such as that, and you live, in the Northeast, and it's going to be, let's say, in the 20s or in the teens. There's some negative effects of tires being that cold if they're not meant to be that cold.
Yeah, for high performance tires, generally the racier the tire, the more dry grip it's got. The compound is tuned for a higher temperature range. And when it gets cold enough, it can actually go through a glass transition and becomes brittle to the point where it will crack if it's flexed. Generally, we say 20 degrees is the point you need to start thinking about it. But really, 0 degrees Fahrenheit, if you've got the tire like a Cup 2, maybe even some of the Pilot Sport 4S and Super Sports, when you're that cold, we really recommend that you don't move them.
So did you guys hear that? For those of you that run those tires, maybe your car sits outside in the winter, or even if your garage gets to that low of a temperature, you might want to invest into maybe a little heater, or just make sure you don't touch the car, because you do not want to crack your very good tires, right? So
yeah, the cold temperature won't do any permanent damage. It's just you don't want to move it and flex the tire when it's that cold.
Okay.
If you don't move it, they heat back up, they'll be fine.
Don't move it. Got it. Okay, so the last true or false will transition to sort of our last topic. So let's see true or false number 5, please. When storing tires, deflate them. Let's give people a few seconds to chime in with their answer. When storing tires, deflate them. And the answer is false. So this will transition to us into tire storage. Let's see, I know that I said there was a couple of questions I had on here, but I'm just going to I think, Steve, you're going to pick up on this topic, and why don't you roll with it?
Okay, yeah, so say you've got summer tires, but you're going to drive your car in the winter and you live in a colder climate. You're going to want to take the summer tires off, and then how's the proper way to store the tires? And really, there are 2 ways to go about it. If you're super hardcore, you can demount them. I don't know how many people would actually do that unless you're using those same rims for your winter tires. But say they're demounted, we recommend that you store them upright, say in a rack or just leaned up against the wall, but in an upright and not stacked on top of each other. I don't know anyone who hangs tires in their garage, but if you do hang them, we don't recommend that you hang them if they're unmounted.
I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone that hangs their tire. But if you do, that's a recommendation. If they're going to remain mounted, we recommend that you stack them and you don't store them upright, or that you hang them. So there's a difference if they're mounted or unmounted. And if they are mounted, we do not recommend. Some people feel the need to overinflate the tire. We do not recommend that. So just keep them at the door pressure of your car. Check them occasionally. If it's going to be a long time, all tires leak air. Even if the wheel is perfect, the tire is perfect, all tires leak air over time. So if it's a long-term storage, we recommend every couple of months, just check your pressure, put a little more air in them if they need it, but don't store them overinflated.
And is it preferable to store them with nitrogen versus regular air?
Nitrogen certainly has some benefits. The biggest benefit, as I see it, is that it's a dry air. There's no moisture. So if you ever go to a gas station air inflator, you put a couple quarters in and you test it before you actually start to inflate your tire, you'll notice a lot of moisture typically coming out, and even home compressors can collect a lot of moisture, and you don't want moisture inside your tire. So nitrogen is a way to be guaranteed that you are not going to have any moisture in there. And then secondly, oxygen and rubber don't necessarily get along over time, and oxygen and steel don't get along over time. And like I mentioned before, air or the molecules are constantly leaking out from the inside of the tire to the outside. And so with nitrogen, that's an inert gas that's leaking out. It's not going to interact with rubber, it's not going to interact with health. You've got regular air in there, the 20% of oxygen is leaking out. Over time, and this is generally a long time, but over time will react with the rubber, will react with the steel belts. So nitrogen is the best way to go.
So for those of us that don't have a nitrogen tank at home, is it okay that, let's say you bought tires and it's filled with nitrogen and it has leaked over time, can you combine just regular air and the nitrogen, or do you have to go back looking for nitrogen?
No, you can mix it. Regular air is, I think, almost 70% nitrogen anyway to begin with. So you're just going to start introducing a little oxygen into the mix when you do that.
Okay. So we saw the Kuberth tire cradles, and that reminds me that there's a lot of us that might have summer tires on their car, and they'll park it for the winter. The Kuberth tires obviously keep the tires round from going square. But let's say you don't have those. Do you have any recommendations, and what are the adverse effects of kind of parking the car on your tires?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I saw there was a question from Willem about long-term storage and what you do. So this is where we're going to deviate a little bit the Michelin recommendation from the Porsche recommendation. Typically, I always follow the Porsche recommendation, whatever it says in your owner's manual. If it's strictly a tire question, if you're going to store your vehicle for a long period of time, of course, from a tire point of view, the best thing to do is to take the weight off of the tire. So if you've got to lift up the vehicle slightly. Otherwise, put it up on some blocks that take the weight off the wheel and tire assembly. That, from a tire point of view, is the very best thing to do. If you don't have the ability to do that, and you're going to keep the load on the tires, the tire cradle certainly can help. So I don't have any internal studies that show the impact of the cradle, but theoretically it can do nothing but help. So that's certainly something that we would recommend. And third, again, we don't recommend that you store them at higher than door pressures. This is a little bit of a juggling act. Long-term flat spotting or permanent flat spotting can happen if you keep too much stress in the cords of the tire, and higher inflation pressure increases the stress in the cords. So we don't recommend that you store them overinflated. Then you're starting to run the risk, though, of if it's really long-term, they're going to lose air pressure over time. So again, we would recommend you check them every couple of months to keep them from getting too deflated.
So that's actually counter to what you're trying to do, because in simple thinking, you're thinking if I'm going to overinflate them, it'll keep them nice and round. But what you've done is you've overstressed the tire, and It's sitting and it's creating a flat spot in an overstressed situation. And then when you go drive the car, 3 months later, that's not a good thing. I didn't think about it that way. Wow. So worst case scenario, let's say you kept moderate, the right pressure in there. You didn't have a tire cradle. The tire does have a little bit of a flat spot to it. Just drive it, or will that be permanent? Will the rubber kind of remember where it was and get back to normal, or?
Yeah, actually, the permanent flat spotting is very rare, and that will happen really the way if you want to make a permanent flat spot happen. Get your tires really hot, overinflate them, and then park the car and leave it sitting for a long period of time. That will certainly probably cause a permanent flat spot. If you follow our recommendations, however, the majority of flat spots is temporary, and after a good 30, certainly no more than 45 minutes of driving, it will typically work its way out to being completely gone.
And So, yeah, this is very helpful for me because again, we're kind of getting into the season. I didn't think about getting the weight off of the car as well to keep everything around, but that makes complete sense because that's essentially like you've taken the tires off and storing
Right.
them somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Any other tips for those that are, planning to keep their car in storage or store their tires for a long period
Yeah,
of time?
make sure you're not parking the car on any oily spots. Oil and rubber don't play well together. And if you were to have an oil spot in your garage and you parked your tire on it and left it for a long period of time, it'll actually eat the rubber away. Um, so make sure it's on a clean surface. Again, away from sources of ozone. If you've got the generator or any kind of electrical equipment, try to keep your tires away from those. Generally, storing them a little cooler is better than storing them in a warm environment, and certainly keep them out of the sun.
Oh, the sun. Yeah, I didn't think about that. One of the things that we should probably address is I know because you kind of put less mileage when you have winter tires on. You don't travel nearly as much for the most part, and you're using them. In my case, you're using them for maybe 1, 2, at most 3 months. So a set of winter tires have big blocks on them too. So it's not unheard of that you could stretch having ownership of winter tires for more than 5 years. And I know 5 years is kind of the mark of tires, although they might look good. That's sort of the time period where you might want to purchase a new one. So maybe you could share a little bit about the timing of, your winter tires might be 8 years old. They may still look good, but might want to still change them.
Yeah, our general rule for tire aging, again, we might deviate a little bit here. I'm ashamed to admit I don't know the Porsche's point of view on tire age. But the Michelin view is that after 5 years that you do an annual inspection. So that's literally looking the tire over, making sure you don't have any kind of punctures, but that there are not any major cracks forming either in the tread, in the center of the tread, in the grooves, in the sidewall. Make sure there's no damage. And if everything looks good, we actually say that you can continue to drive on those tires for up to 10 years. At that point, at 10 years, even if you've only got 100 miles on them, and they look beautiful, we recommend that you replace them.
Okay, so after 5 years, you're looking after them annually, make sure that they're in good shape, and if they are, then you can continue to roll on. But 10 years is definitely, even if it looks pristine, that rubber is 10 years old, and you've got a lot of precious cargo riding in your car and lots of weight and so on and so forth. You do not want to take a chance with older tires on your car.
Yeah. The other thing I'll add, especially in the case of winter, and it's good you talked a little bit about storage and things like that. Depending on how they've been stored and how much use you've had on them, after you've done the inspection, it's key also to understand the environment and the conditions that you're driving in as well. You want to make sure you still have that level of traction and grip in those different conditions, like for snow or ice, or again at cold temperatures. Again, the compound for the tire should be sufficient for cold temperatures, but again, based off of how you stored or used the product, there could be a compromise with the performance in the winter area as well. So.
And I've seen some folks that post in the PCA Mart, for example, that they've had extra tires, be it summer and or winter tires that kept in basement or kept in bags or kept in the garage. Is some of that good? Some of that just kind of extra adjective so that they can try to sell the tires? I mean, does temperature during storage, assuming it's not extreme, I mean, if it's in your house, it's not going to be extreme, or if it's in your basement or garage, probably isn't going to be extreme. So does it matter that much when you're storing them too?
Yeah, it can have quite an impact. Generally, cooler is better.
Cooler. Okay.
Yep. So I hear people put them in bags and put them in their crawl space or in their basement. Anywhere where it's going to stay cool is a good way to store your tires. The bags prevent any contact with oils. Does keep some of the air interaction down. Certainly keeps the sun off of them. So yeah, it's there are some better ways than others to store tires. However, even if it's, like I said, if it's over 10 years old, it might look beautiful and brand new. And the only thing I would recommend that you use that tire for is perhaps you're taking your car to car shows. But if you're going to do any kind of aggressive driving, higher speed on the interstate, anything like that, we recommend.
All right. Well, guys, I told you an hour would fly by. We're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope that you and your family stay safe, stay healthy. We look forward to seeing you at a PCA event soon. But unless you guys have anything else, we're going to sign off. Thank you, everyone, and congratulations to the winners.